We have joining us tonight for the interview somebody who I am very, very glad can be here this evening. I'm going to get straight to him. It's Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Schiff, thank you for being here. I know it has been a crazy day for you, sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Let me ask you first. I know that you were a no vote on the vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act today. No Democrats voted for it at all. Can I just ask your reaction to the fact that it passed?
Well, you know, deeply saddened by its passage because it means, of course, millions of people are going to lose their health insurance. And I'll tell you, those stories that you just aired, Rachel, with those people who were so deeply impacted by this, reminded me of a different interaction I had with one of my constituents years ago, right after the passage of the Affordable Care Act, which cut in a very different direction. I had someone come up. I was doing sidewalk office hours in the Glendale Gallery. I had a little table set up. He asked me how I voted on the Affordable Care Act, and I told him I could tell that it was not the vote that he wanted me to cast. And he asked me, what could I possibly have liked about the Affordable Care Act? And I explained that I liked the fact if you had a pre-existing condition, you could get coverage. If you had a kid who wasn't employed, but they're under 26, they could stay in your plan. I listed a number of things I liked about it. And then I said, and I like the fact that tens of millions of people that can't get access to health care are going to get it. And he said something after that, Rachel, which I have to say shocked me, and I thought I'd heard everything. He said, you really think that's such a good thing? And I said, well, yes, don't you? And he said, no, I don't. If they can't afford it, they shouldn't have it. And I knew that the second that he said it, that he was speaking for a great many of my colleagues in Congress who, at root, believe that if you can't afford coverage, if you're, you have pediatric cancer and your parents can't afford it, or if you're elderly and have diabetes and you can't afford it, that's your problem. And at the heart of this is a conclusion that among a majority of my colleagues, sadly today, they would rather give a big tax cut to people who are already doing well than try to help people get access to health care. And that made it a very sad day, all the sadder to see people celebrating it.
I wonder, hearing you say that, you know, the Senate obviously is going to take a crack at this next. We don't know what exactly they're going to do. There was word from the Republicans in the Senate today that they, unlike the House, plan to wait for the score, the CBO score, before they take a vote in the Senate, which means by the time they're voting on it, they'll know at least the estimates of how many millions of people will lose their health insurance because of it, how many people, the proportion of poor people versus old people versus already sick people versus disabled people who will be hurt by this. I wonder if, given that perspective, if you actually think the Republicans don't mind this for the political argument, the news that millions of people will lose insurance. They see that as a plus, not a minus.
You know, I think that this is not something they're ever going to say publicly. Like that constituent said it to me privately. Even that constituent probably wouldn't say that in a town hall. I do think, though, that is how some of my colleagues feel. Too many of them feel that way. And in particular, they've been out saying that they had this great alternative, the Affordable Care Act, for the last 7 years. And, of course, they had nothing at all to show for it, no plan whatsoever. It was just a campaign slogan. So I think they felt compelled to vote for this, but I also think they recognize this will very well come back to haunt them. And those images of the celebration on the White House lawn, when it becomes clear that millions and millions of people are going to lose their health care if this bill ever became law, those images, they're likely to see them again around election time, and I don't think they'll be celebrating then.
Congressman, I know that you and your House Intelligence Committee today had a closed-door hearing on the Trump-Russia investigation. Would you mind sticking with us through the break so I can ask you a question about that you won't be able to answer because it's classified?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back with Congressman Adam Schiff. Joining us once again is Congressman Adam Schiff, top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you for sticking with us. I appreciate it.
You bet.
So your committee, the House Intel Committee, held a closed-door hearing today with the FBI Director James Comey and NSA Director Michael Rogers. And I know you can't talk about anything classified that was said in a closed session, but can you tell us anything about how today went and overall about whether your investigation is making progress?
I think today went very well, and we are making progress. Mike Conaway and I have worked together, I think, in the last several weeks that we've been tasked with doing this jointly in a very nonpartisan, very matter-of-fact way. We're back to scheduling our witnesses. We're back to getting our hearings on track. We're back to getting new documents from the intelligence community. So I think things are moving in a very positive direction. I think the hearing went well today. Frankly, I think it probably went better than if we covered the same issue that they had in the hearing yesterday, because I had such strong disagreement, frankly, with the views that Director Comey expressed yesterday in the open hearing. I don't think the choice at all was between speaking and concealing, and I think the use of that term conceal was such a loaded term, and quite deliberately so, that it really undermined the argument that he was making. I think the choice really was between adhering to Department of Justice policy and not talking about a pending investigation in the run-up to an election, or not adhering to DOJ policy. So if our hearing had been on the topic, it probably would not have gone so smoothly. But as it was, I think it went very well.
You know, one of the things, obviously, you're talking there about Director Comey and his decision to talk about the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails before the election, even though he didn't talk about the FBI investigation into the Trump campaign in Russia until after the election. One of the things I've been thinking about with Director Comey and his remarks about the Trump investigation is that because it's a counterintelligence investigation, it's likely that we may never hear from him again on that subject. It's possible that we'll never hear from him again on that subject. Can I just ask you, as a matter of law and procedure here, if there were indictments or criminal complaints filed against anybody in relation to that investigation, if that's where the FBI went with the Trump-Russia investigation, would we, the public, definitely know about that? Or is it possible that something like that might happen without any public notification?
Well, if this resulted in criminal charges, then the public would know about it. It may not come from Director Comey. That may be announced by, in this case, the Deputy Attorney General that now has been charged in Jeff Sessions in the wake of his recusal with overseeing the Russia investigation. So you might have the Deputy AG announce the charge has been filed. You might have Director Comey standing next to him. But generally, the FBI wouldn't be the one to be discussing that necessarily. But here, of course, you know, all bets are somewhat off, because plainly the department did talk about the Clinton investigation. Whether the director will follow that model or the traditional model of deferring to the department, I have to think he's more likely to do the latter. If the investigation didn't result in charges, then you might not hear Director Comey testifying in the open subsequently about it. That, again, would be, if he did, a departure from usual practice. So under those circumstances, you might not hear from him again.
Do we have a date yet for the open hearing that would involve Sally Yates, among others?
We're in consultation with the counsel for Sally Yates, Directors Clapper and Brennan. We're trying to see if we can get that on calendar in the couple weeks following this recess. Okay. And I'm confident that we will. And, you know, I really am pleased to say that our investigation is back on track. And it's very important that it is, because, frankly, we have very limited resources, and so does the Senate. If either one of these investigations were to get derailed, it would mean only half of the eyes on task.
Adam Schiff, ranking member, top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Sir, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate you being here.
You bet.